organizations are hit by innovation that their competitors do, or something that comes up in the market, or some some smart cloud service provider, SaaS company, or some digital company comes to a company and suggests, hey, why don't you look at this initiative, that initiative? We can innovate, we can create value, we can disrupt, right? So often it is someone from outside who comes and educates the company that these are the kind of disruptions you can do. This is how you can change the market and so on. But what can companies do to discover this themselves rather than having someone else come and tell them what to do? What mindset, what process, what can a company do, to discover this themselves?
Pretty hard, Siddharth. Pretty hard to do what you are saying in some sense of words. So let's take, for example, you are a CEO of a very successful company, somebody who is really winning out there in the marketplace, gaining share from competitors, to some degree even delighting customers in some sense. To go into a company like this, which is very successful, profit making, shareholders like them, and to say that, hey, we're going to shake this bastion up, it's always a pretty hard challenge. Pandemic, let's forget about it, but it's a pretty hard challenge. What do you do to shake a company like this up? I think is to look at opportunities, in some sense of the word, because there are only two things that make people innovate faster. One is opportunity, the other is adversity. Yeah, these are the only two things that are known to humankind that will force people to change. So I would say that in the normal sense of the word, being able to create that opportunity or envision an opportunity which would allow you to put all of the digital stuff that you're thinking of and produce something bigger or different, I think that can propel people on. The other is adversity. Okay. And obviously COVID or a pandemic like this is obviously the extreme form of adversity, and in which case people react. If you are getting bought over, taken over, that's also anytime adversity is of the survival kind, that will make people react fastest to change. Whenever it is of an efficiency or an improvement kind, it is obviously more difficult for you to be able to change
the status quo. Yeah.
And I think in those kind of situations, I would look at third parties who can bring you snippets or knowledges from other people who have done it in your situation, to be able to excite people that even we could do it in some sense of the word out there. In the opportunistic kind, clearly this could only be done by companies that can rethink and reshape their own stuff in some sense. So I would say that is self-initiated in some sense of the word, which is probably the best way to do it. And I think in that, the biggest weapon is, can I disrupt myself? If I was to be able to envision creating a company that could disrupt us and then go about actually doing all those things ourselves.
Proactively. Yeah.
Best technology I can think of to create sort of a new vision of what you could be in some sense. So that's my order. If you are a very successful company, you have a leadership that is doing everything else, think about what can disrupt you and figure out a way of how you could do it yourself. Maybe to some degree, it could be experiments, and then you integrate them into your major company, if it's very risky, so to speak. Or it could be, more evolutionary, where you can introduce some of those new services or new products into your organizations. And if you are in the middle pack where you are efficiency, opportunity led, then think about third parties who can really bring you that wealth of knowledge or excite your organization because they've done it elsewhere. And if survival is at stake, then I guess, you will probably not need help, because if you don't innovate, people pretty much know that you're going to go under at some point of time. I think managements that are in continuous denial that this cannot happen to us. Again, I would say 5 years ago that might exist. Today, Siddharth, I would find it very difficult to say that anybody, even the most traditional CEO owner in the world, knows that digital technology will have an impact on the business. So I think that conversation that, oh, will this impact me? I think that is passe. What you need to have a conversation on is how, when, and what do I do to change? Uh, I think we overplay the card that isko to nahi samajh mein aata hai. That I think is being pretty rude to somebody in that sense of word. Even an 80-year-old understands how technology will change people. I mean, people are, you see so many businesses, home businesses that have got created in the pandemic. Many of them truly understand the power of digital technology today. And I'm sure, they will be pushing their favorite companies to provide a more digital product today.
A bit of a digital aside, okay, just to take it slightly on a different topic, what is the role of design thinking, in your view? I mean, there's a lot of talk about design thinking some 5-6 years back to actually discover opportunities for, innovation or disrupting the business or something completely, new. Any ideas on that? Any thoughts on that?
So again, people will look at the entire design thinking methodology, and maybe there are bigger experts than me who can tell you how to use it well. But what I understand at the simplest level about design thinking is, can I put myself in the shoe of somebody else, think about what problems they have with our existing service or product, think about what could excite them more with newer products and services, and then go about, cascading this back down. So go to the next person who's servicing, see what problems they would have with the new service, then go to the next person, then go to the next person, then go to the next person. The beauty of design thinking principle is, think about what you want to create and then work backwards to be able to figure out what is the last point of change within your company that you need to change to be able to deliver that. And I think if that principle is understood, then how much of a process you want to put on it is up to individual organizations to put there. But this is, entrepreneurs used to do this intuitively.
Yeah.
They never called it design thinking in some sense of the word. I work for a company which got created because there were a bunch of companies at one point of time that sold paint only in 4-liter cans. And the common man in those days could not afford 4-liter cans of paint, and so would land up buying loose paint. And this company got created because we sold 50 ml cans and 100 ml cans in some sense. Now, if I went to those old people, if they were alive today, and told them that, look, the founders, that, look, you did design thinking, they would have said, I did no such thing. I just put the customer at the front of it. I envisioned what they would want, and I went about creating that product. I figured out that to get that product to them, I needed this sort of dealer and this sort of distribution network and this sort of mechanism. And the rest kind of followed as a natural instinct in some sense of the word. So I think at some level, design thinking is relatively intuitive. At another level, it gives you the process by which you could take that same intuitive thinking that one person who's radically innovative can do, and then make an entire organization of tens of thousands of people do it, because there is some science and process by which you can involve them. And that, I think, is the beauty of design thinking, that you could take a very innovative person, and that one person could do it for themselves and many things that they impact. But how can you make the rest of the ecosystem around that person do it? And design thinking is that methodology that allows you to translate it in some sense.
Manish, since we are talking about this topic of getting a company on that journey from where they are to digitally ready, when would you call a company digitally ready? That, okay, now they have everything in place. Any symptoms, any thoughts on that?
So I don't think you can stop the journey. By definition, obviously technology will evolve. The ability to use technology will evolve with it in some sense of the word. So this is going to be a continuous journey. Maybe the sort of incremental gain from putting in new technology might plateau a little bit till there is a new wave of technology that comes in. You will have to adopt that. So I would say that For any company, if it is, having a perfect, a relatively good and healthy mix of how they use technology to produce the product or service that they've got, to be able to move the product or service from the place that they produce it and deliver it to the customer, and get the customer to be able to engage with that service, to be able to figure out what that service or product is all about and be able to consume it well, and then provide them robust feedback so that they can improve this entire engine.
Loop is
The
closed.
full loop can be circled. I would say if you can truthfully answer that you have put in the right mix of technology, then I would say, hey, you're at least digitally ready. You may not be a digital master, but you're digitally ready in some sense of the word. How well you do this and at what speed you do this is going to put you into whether you're a digital master or sort of a digital starter in that sense of the word. But you're definitely digitally ready is the way I look at it. And I think I would still say that please start at the front and not at the back.
Start with the customer, basically.
And services, look at your processes for those products and services, including R&D and innovation on new products and services, and then go to the back end. In some sense of the word, because it allows you to get that so-called older question you asked, the sort of digital architecture ready a little bit better. If you start from the back, you may put in investments in some of the things where you find that alignment between what the customer wants and what you've got ready as a digital platform, maybe at a bit more of a variance than you imagine, because you did not fully envision what you wanted to deliver to the customer. So let's again go back to my favorite example. If Asian Paints wanted to be a digital ready coatings company, maybe the set of solutions and the set of things that I would do is going to be reasonably different than if I wanted to be a digital ready decor service provider. So these are two different sort of paths that I would take. And if I was not sure what I wanted to deliver to the customer, I might just go and either underinvest in some things, which would land up creating some sort of, I wouldn't say dissonance, but maybe some sort of challenges down the road when I get to customer facing parts of it. Also being able to measure the outcome of how substantially you change or impacted the company would become a lot harder, because all the equations would give you only internal metrics on efficiency, lean, etc. It would give you very few growth and opportunistic, metrics of how digital has impacted your company. Maybe decreasing or diminishing the impact that you can show to your own stakeholders within the company. And maybe you would undershoot your capability rather than, sort of meeting or expecting the capability that you can deliver at some sense.
Manish, this digital readiness, how does one, leverage it for growth opportunities or for accelerating, businesses which are in a downturn? If they are digitally ready, how can they harness that for business recovery? Any thoughts on that?
I think one, you will definitely be a little more agile. If you are readying yourself for this digital journey, let's assume that you are a B2B business in the pandemic and you are looking at now opportunities to invest in making yourself more digital. I mean, my first set would be, how are we exchanging our ideas with our customers? Let's say there is an auto component parts manufacturer. How am I getting the designs? What am I doing in terms of testing protocols? Are my testing protocols easy to share with my customers in terms of the kind of test I've conducted for newer parts, etc., etc. So you could look at that. You could also say, what is my sales process looking like? If I'm not able to visit my customer, can I make my sales process a little more digital ready? Yes, a perfect integration would be that their forecast become your sales things. All of that is great, but am I able to at least share data in a digital form such that even large amounts of data can be shared relatively quickly? Customers can invest in those kind of technologies relatively quickly. And then they go back and look at their manufacturing processes out there. What can I do to my distribution process that makes it more efficient to work with vendors? There are many digital ready service providers who are startups who are willing to bring not only the aggregation of trucks that they have done, but also are ready to bring some of the newer processes or best of class processes for helping you improve the tracking and administration of logistics. You could easily partner with some of them to do a bit of a filling up or a band-aid solution, if not a total integration to begin with. And then obviously look at how you are working with your vendors and sharing information with them in digital form so that your manufacturing process is more efficient. I think the next wave of technology will be more hardcore. Can I make my machinery more technology or digital ready, IoT, those kind of things? So I would say digital readiness would also come in waves of capability. It's far easier to adopt process level digital technology. I would say that product level technology might be hardest, but might require you to do that because survival is at stake because somebody is disrupting your products and services. The in-between layer on how to innovate much faster and deliver better products and services is probably the most difficult part, because then you are trying to institutionalize some of these things that you want to do far more rapidly in some sense of the word. So always start with that process layer, think about it. So if you're a traditional business, you think you're going to remain like that, making components for somebody else, fair enough. I would say that most components will become smart in some period of time. It's almost pre-gone conclusion that you will embed some intelligence in even some of the dumbest parts that we think out there. So it's pretty hard. You know, we used to think that dispensers could not be put on digital. Today, a lot of sensor-based technology is becoming cheaper and cheaper to be available. So I find it pretty hard for somebody to say that I will not get impacted in some sense. But easiest is look at your process and make it more digital. Look at your product and see how you can embed digital technology in the product to make it more intelligent. And finally, look at products that are where people and these products and machines have to come together. Those are probably the hardest to innovate on in some sense of the word.
We are already seeing it in the impact of the pandemic. Already companies that were not ready are struggling, but even the larger companies which are not really there from a digital standpoint, how is it going to hurt their business? What should they be worried about?
So I would say, first of all, I mean, in the short term, I don't think this pandemic is going to end very, very quickly. In some sense of the word, before we get a vaccine that is, or vaccines that are reasonable, have a reasonable impact. And of course, the greater challenge is to get it to the population of the world, especially in a country like India. It's going to be a huge challenge. So first thing I would tell people is, look, how are you going to survive the next 6 months, 8 months? Or if you're struggling to start up, and how you're going to start up in some sense of the word. So I'll give you an example, which is probably too mundane. I also run a family office in some sense of the word. And our family office is very, very traditional. Some of the seniors are used to, signing checks, signing documents, and most of the accountants or the secretarial team and the legal team is doing the back end work with a bunch of people. We are going to have to think about, putting all of that documentation in some shape and form in digital ready format. So my first goal was to actually move the entire accounting system to the cloud. By the way, the vendor always gave that solution. You never chose to host it on the cloud. A simple mechanism of doing that in the month of May made sure that our accounting processes moved on to the cloud and employees could work from home. We used to always worry about the cost of giving them desktops and laptops in some sense of the word. The pandemic has made it that much easier to make this decision. So I'm saying some of the investment trade-offs that were there in the non-pandemic world, these trade-offs have been made far more starker in today's times, in some sense of the word. And with those new inputs, I think you need to rethink, what sort of investment payback returns that you're going to look at, because you're going to have to factor in some sense of resiliency into that equation. Most of the time, we were always looking at input and what kind of outcomes you get. But a lot of companies need to think about resiliency. I'll go back to our example on Asian Paints and our automation journey in the manufacturing plants. Our automation journey was not decided on digital technology and making it more digital and all of those things, or the information we got. It was decided on how can I make sure that I have closed loop systems that minimize material loss. That was the sort of thinking that went behind it. Now, the minute I have closed loop systems, I had to think about how to monitor that process. And so you put in digital technology and automation to monitor that process. In that sense of the word. So in order to be able to get the material cost savings on wastage, which would come in a closed loop process, we put in technology to manage that process. What we learned in the bargain was that technology became far more repeatable. The process became far more repeatable with the use of technology, which allowed it to be more scalable. So I would dare say that this is a virtuous cycle. Those businesses that are not digitally ready need to think about resiliency as a means to build scalability on that business in some sense of the word. If you invest in digital technology, your business is a little more resilient in this time, but for the future, it is far more scalable. You probably will be able to do more with your existing number of people, or maybe work with lesser people in some sense of the word, or the existing partners will become more efficient than what they were before. So I think this pandemic was taught us that there is a new equation. Resiliency and scalability have a huge role in the digital transformation equation. It's not only about opportunity and it's not only about efficiency, but it's also about how resilient you are and how scalable you can make the processes to be out there. And that can be embedded into equation to make some of these processes or decisions a little bit easier, even for more traditional businesses of some sense of the word. And I think most are recognizing it. I think the greatest challenge they got is how do you execute? A lot of these businesses do not have the capabilities within the business to execute. So I think the owners and some of the leaders of those companies do recognize that they need to invest. And I think the greatest challenge is the ability to get the talent to be able to invest. I would say that if it is a slightly larger business, rely on the younger people in the company a little bit more. And I think you will be able to figure out that they have talent to be able to do some of the things with the help of external partners. And you don't need to really do some rip and replace and get rid of everybody else. So that earlier model of symbiosis kind of can work. Get a junior leader to inspire your leadership to be able to work. And I'm sure they'll be able to figure out a new collaboration model that helps your company become more digitally native. And same for the owners. Maybe get your children, somebody who's 25, 27, who is digitally native to come join your business and think about the digital ideas, and you provide them the subject matter expertise of the business in some sense of the word. So if the owner does it, I'm sure every manager within their leadership team will figure out a way to pick somebody within their team to get on this journey. Now, if you're a business that's even weaker than that, then you have no choice but to get a partner, a consulting organization. And there are many who are willing to work with much smaller companies today because there has been so much of rich talent that has sort of exited maybe larger companies. And they would be happy to provide these things to people in some sense of the word. And it's not so difficult to find people.
Fair enough. Manish, one last question related to the business itself, which is, digital. How can it, what role does it play in disintermediation? So a lot of intermediaries in business, what can digital do for that?
So you look at digital's two big answers. One is disintermediation and another is aggregation. both of these are fairly important topics of, sort of digital opportunities. In most companies, I would almost say that if a company is rethinking their products in the products and services in the digital age, one of these two factors is going to be sort of a chief ingredient for innovation, or maybe both can play themselves out in some sense of it. So if you look at technology companies like Apple, etc., they are thinking about how to, expand their product range such that they own sort of the customer's personal life journey in terms of digital touch points. If I were to say, I would dare say, at one point of time, GE used to say, we bring good things to life. Maybe Apple might have a similar slogan, sort of to say that, look, I am your digital partner in your personal journey. From the time you're born to the time you die, you will use me to sort of
discover the world,
all the life experiences that you want to deliver. And that's the thinking that is enabling newer products and services to come along. And I would say that comes out of disintermediation. So take, for example, all of the stuff that they're putting into their watch. In some sense, I don't think they can replace a doctor, but they're certainly making the ability of a health professional to service that customer much, much easier in some sense, either in diagnosis or in terms of information, or for that matter, in getting the information back to them and tracking sort of how well they are doing in terms of advice in some sense of the word. So I would say that that's a different form of disintermediation, where that so-called nurse who used to do all these things pretty much can be done away with in some point of time, in terms of getting the basic vitals of your body to a doctor who understands you much better in that sense of the word. So even at that level of deep learning, you are able to embed digital technology that is changing things. Take, for example, farmers growing crops. There are enough digital startups in India that are getting one better understanding of what the soil is, what the crops are, what's the weather there, by various either devices or satellite data, and are able to predict and tell the farmer what to do, what kind of crop science, crop protection to apply, what sort of crops to weave, when to sort of harvest them, etc., etc. And all of these are making a difference. So I would say that disintermediation is well within reach. I think aggregation has sort of gained a different momentum altogether in some sense of the word. Sort of disparate markets are sort of seemingly being brought together on a single platform, and being able to deliver sort of greater services to consumers in some sense. Amazon, Flipkart, classic examples of aggregation platforms that are obviously increasing consumer choice, but are at the simultaneously also increasing, the ability to service customers. The so-called village market phenomena. I live in Mumbai, and Dadar East used to be the place where you went to shop when you wanted unbranded clothes. And the few 20 manufacturers who were able to work with those retailers in that market were able to survive. I'm sure with the number of platforms you have got for selling fashion accessories and fashion wear, the number of people who are able to produce fashion has only gone up, and opportunities have only grown in some sense of the word. And some companies have become, almost multi-thousand crore companies, surviving only on selling on the internet of some sense of the word. So I would say aggregation has a completely new meaning and new platform. Obviously, the extreme form of aggregation is when both digital technology, physical products, and a service come together. And that mashup creates something that one could never imagine earlier. And that has a way of unprecedentedly changing your life of sort. Extreme form of that is a Tesla car, or a brand new robo, so to speak, that replaces a human being in terms of some customer engagement point or some service point, in extremely hostile situations, etc. I think these will continue to play a massive role out there. I think you must use these two words, one as a means to obviously understand the digital process, but I would use these two words to almost be triggers on design thinking, on what you could do differently with your customers out there. So rather than having either customers think about it, maybe companies who are creating products and services should think about what they can do to disintermediate. And the common fallacy in the traditional world was that if you got disintermediated or there was an aggregator, somebody would become redundant. The beauty of the digital world is maybe somebody would become redundant, but there could be other service providers who become very, very relevant. So take, for example, who would have thought that the logistics business would become so sexy? You know, it was a humdrum business, wo trucker hai, warehouse hai. Today, from warehousing to, shipping, the entire business has got transformed with the intermixing of digital technology and the information that you're out there, where a very, very humdrum old business has been made completely sexy, delivering tremendous amount of value to all the stakeholders, from the shareholders who become very rich on very leading companies out there, to the customers who got service well, to the truckers whose life has become better.
Because the heart of the e-commerce wave, right? Absolutely heart.
At one point of time, a trucker came and you just told him, wait. Today, the trucker has enough rights to demand that, look, you were told I'm going to show up here at 12:41. I've showed up here at 12:41. You better get the goods out of my truck. In some sense, every stakeholder in that value chain has got something working for them. I'm sure robos will do something more, both for the warehouses as well as for the actual shipping. And I still don't think we have discovered all the disintermediation that can happen on last mile delivery, because as yet, nobody has really perfected the micro delivery model of delivering one piece of item very efficiently to
drones, for example. Now drones are the next.
So I'm sure the next wave of digital technology is going to change. I've heard there's a company out of the valley that is delivering 70% of the critical healthcare supplies in countries like Ghana. It is being able to deliver health supplies out there. The Indian government or many state governments have similar protocols that they're trying to champion, where I can get critical supplies using drones to people who are not there. There are people trying artificial intelligence on medical data so that they can power a sort of a non-medical but expert, somebody that does not have a medical degree, to be able to at least use a device to be able to diagnose problems or be able to transmit data that can allow you to diagnose problems. But I think, Siddharth, one of the points that we've not touched upon in this whole thing is how do you make digital transformation pay for itself?